Hey everyone, welcome to episode 154 of the Laravel News Podcast. I'm going to turn my microphone down a tiny bit here because I think I'm clipping. Sorry about that, everybody. If I just blasted out your ears, my apologies. But welcome to episode 154. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Quick shout out at the top of the show to our sponsor, Honey Badger. They're back, folks. They are back and freaking better than ever. We love you, Honey Badger. For all of your error tracking needs, Honey Badger is the place to be. Definitely check that out, folks. It is awesome, and we are so thankful to have you back as a sponsor, Honey Badger. Thanks so much. Michael, how's it going, dude?
Going well. Just got back from a 5K. Took
Nice, really?
Yeah. No, I'm back running. We went to the park with the kids this morning, and we came back, and I said to Ree, there's a nice breeze at the moment. So the temperature's just right. There's a nice breeze, and I said, knowing my luck, the nice breeze will be into my face on the way back, which makes the run harder. But I run along the Esplanade, so like right on the foreshore at the beach.
Sure.
And so the wind is always blowing in my face. Doesn't matter whether I'm going away from home or coming back from home. They like swirls. So no, I managed to shave 22 seconds off my 5K average.
Personal best?
No, it's
nice.
my
your average
kilometer,
well,
my average kilometer pace. So it's going pretty good. But yeah, about 2 minutes off in the end. So it's
good
coming
deal,
down,
man. That's great.
Down to 32 minutes for 5. So getting there.
That's awesome, man.
Now that it's getting warmer and consistently warmer, I'm starting to run a bit more. But with these old man's knees, I got the the Facebook memories came up, and 11 years ago today, I did my first knee injury. So
I'm really glad to hear that I'm not. I mean, I actually forgot that you had the knee injury stuff because I was just about to bring up, like, dude, I'm getting old. My knees are not great. Like, I haven't had surgery yet at all. But I don't know. Maybe this summer I was like first knee pain I've ever felt ever.
Yeah.
And it was like we went on a trip to St. Louis. We went and saw the Arch. Went and did all this fun stuff. And like my kids were like jumping off this curb and doing something like funny. And I was like, oh, yeah, you think that's cool? Watch Dad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, mistake.
Yeah.
And twisted that knee. And now, like, if I ever do anything a little too intense, it's like the next day I'm like limping down the stairs. It's like, oh, come on.
Yeah, this is my
I'm going to be like old man Dorinda pretty soon. Going to need some knee surgery and no fun.
Pray that you don't need the surgery because it's not much fun. It knocks you out for a bit, and then it's just a slow recovery. So yeah, 10 years ago today, I did the right knee, and it was funny because I was looking at it. I'm like, hang on, I did my left knee 3 years ago in October, and it's like the 31st of October here. I'm like, if I can just make it through today without, because like October seems to be the month that I do my knees. So, yeah, no, it was fine. It was actually a good run.
Don't screw up your knee. And then you went for a run. Yeah.
And then I went for a run. Okay. Knowing this, like I saw this on Facebook and I was already committed to the run. I'm like, I'm going anyway. Like this is going to happen. So, but it felt good. The last 5K I did 2 weeks ago felt pretty good as well. And then like was not as good the next day. So I went, had a shower, and I got to put some cream into the knee, in both knees, I guess, just to make sure that they settle. So it's usually into the evening and the next day that they start to flare up.
No, I'm going to ask this. I assume this is true. But you guys have paintball? You know what paintball is?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. So recently went to a birthday party that my kid was invited to, and the dad of the other kid was like, hey, you want to just come and play paintball too? I could use another adult to kind of help manage the kids. I was like, dude, yes, please. That'd be awesome. So I played that day, and like my knee was destroyed the next day, and that was the first time I was like, oh my gosh, like really bad. But then I was like, I got to go back with my team. So I took my team from work back to go paintballing on Thursday this last week. Destroyed my knee again, which was worth it, totally worth it. Dude pulled his hamstring though, like slipped and it popped, and he was like, cause only one really bad injury, but it's so fun, dude. And like that's, I'm sure I ran at least a 5K during that thing because you're just running your
moving the whole time,
heart out,
and it's like up
you don't
and
realize
down,
it,
and it's across terrain, so it's not like you're just running. It's full on, and then just the pain you feel the next day and 2 days later and 3 days later. So
exactly, and like I mean, you don't realize it until after you get shot and you're walking off the field and you're like, because I haven't run in too long. So hey, anyway, we should probably get into it, shall we?
Let's do it. Laravel releases.
Shall we get into it? Okay. Laravel releases. Let's hit it up with 8.65. Here we go. All right, the Laravel team released 8.65 with the ability to generate test files during make commands, a string headline method, getting a subset of data as a collection from the request instance, and the latest changes in the 8.x branch. Let's start with this string headline method. So Steve Bauman contributed a headline method to the string and stringable classes, which converts a string into studly words. So if, for example, you had a class called voice recording stored, and you're using as you might with your classes, this is typically how we do it. You capitalize each word. Like you'd use camel casing, but usually in camel casing, you do lowercase on the first, and then you kind of go up from there. You would uppercase voice recording stored all as one word. If you passed that to headline, the string headline, it would say voice space recording space stored with each of those words being uppercased, right? You can also do it with studly words. So if you had dashes, if you had something in kebab case and you did studly words, it would do the same sort of casing, uppercase on each one of those with spaces in between. So that's the new headline method there. We have a gate policy callback, which was contributed by Leonard Karstens Behrens. So he contributed the ability to pass policy callbacks to a gate. So you have policies which typically are related to models, so you can set those up. But you also have this idea of gates, which a gate is essentially just an ability that you can define, and then you can have a truthy statement that will then determine whether or not a particular user has the ability to do an action, right? So in this case, I'm going to kind of read through it here. He has gate inspect post policy class. Okay, so he's looking at a post policy and he's looking at the update method, passing in a post, authorizing it. Let's see, pass callbacks to a gate. Sorry, folks.
I think the key here is that it's using the tuple notation. So where
is that it?
Yeah.
Oh, he has like an invocable policy here, though.
Yep. So same as with routes, right? Where you can have like
I suppose
/user, and then you have an array, and then you have user controller, comma, index. Or if you
I'm gonna have to look into the pull request of this one.
Or if you have like subscribe to a newsletter as a class that just has an invoke method. So this is around being able to
no, you're right.
Click through.
That's right.
Click through from your classes to the things. Whereas before you would have like gate check or gate allow, and you would just have like update as a string, and then you've got to like go and find the corresponding policy and things like that. So now, conventionally it would be gate : check update as a string, comma, and then you'd pass like $post or new post as a model. And then conventionally, you would know that refers to post policy in the app policies directory, whereas this is being explicit using the tuple notation, where you would pass an array, which is the first element in the array is the class, so post policy : class, and then the second is the method. And then if it's an invocable, it's an implied, so you just pass the class as the class string there as a parameter. So it's nice to see this kind of stuff leaking through, or not leaking through, I suppose, finding its way, creeping into the framework. Because it is nice
it makes it friendly for IDEs.
For IDEs, for discoverability and following the code from route through to controller through to policies and all that kind of stuff. So it's good for navigation of code, especially if you're coming into a new code base.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And that's exactly what it is. Yep. After looking at the pull request, you are 100% correct. That is what it is. Okay, we've also got this configurable remember me cookie duration. So James Freeman contributed a configurable duration for the remember me cookie that is configurable via the config/auth file. So a remember me cookie, you may know, is if somebody logs into your site, what Laravel will do is if you have a remember Boolean that's coming through and it's true, it will set a cookie so that the next time they come back to your site, they will not need to log in again. It will just check that token value, make sure that matches what's in their remember token in the users table, and then we'll just automatically log them in. So what this allows you to do is set a value like remember now add days 7, and then you just, in this case, is just calling diff in minutes. So it's just providing a minute value to that remember token. So the default expiration is 5 years. which will continue to be the case if you don't set a configuration value, but now you have the option to set it for a shorter duration. We also have the ability now to generate tests within various artisan commands. So Luke Downing contributed the ability to use the --test or --pest flag, if that's your preferred flavor of PHP unit stuff using pest. So --test or --pest flag to generate a test during artisan make commands. Here's the list of commands that now have this flag. Command, job, listener, mail, model, notification, controller, or middleware. So if you make any of those, so PHP artisan make notification --pest, that will generate the notification class as well as a test for you in the pest flavor. So that's pretty helpful. We now also have, this is a tough one, Eraldo, Aravalo, Delphin contributed the ability to get a subset of input data from the requests collect function. So if you have a request coming in and you're passing in a set of users, you're passing in a set of roles, you're passing in an email, you can then in your controller call $request, collect, and then say, give me all the roles. And that will give you a collection of the values that were passed through in the request. Validating multiple date formats. Steve Bauman contributed the ability to pass multiple date formats to the date format validation rule. Previously, you could only pass one date format to this, and so it'd say if it wasn't that format, it fails. So now this validates the input must match one of the possible formats. So you might pass year, month, day, or just month, day, excluding the year. And then later you could say if they exclude the year, assume it's this year, right? You could do something like that. So now you can pass multiple format options to that validation rule. We also have contributed by Dries an update from method for the Postgres SQL grammar. And then lastly, we have a new assertion, assert redirect contains. So Frederick contributed this ability to assert redirect contains method on the test response instance. So you could say it contains a particular URL fragment. So you could say you might not know exactly the entire thing that you're looking for, but you're going to know it's going to contain a particular fragment. You can assert that the redirect contains that URL fragment and check its truthiness. Wow, that's a lot of stuff there. So that's 8.65. A lot of stuff to play around with there. Michael, 8.68 coming up next.
You say that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of stuff in one release. This next one covers 8.66, 8.67, and 8.68. So we're going to hit the highlights of each of those ones, starting from 8.66. The first one we have here is a pull request from Chris Kankiewicz, which is an array isList method. So in the array Illuminate Support ARR class, there is a new isList method for determining if an array is a list. An array is considered a list if all the keys are sequential integers starting at 0 without gaps in between them. So this is if you have just an array of values. So you've got an open array bracket, you've got a list of names, Jake, Taylor, Jeffrey, Colin, Matt, right? That is considered a list in programming terms. If you want to know more about that, you can check out pull request 39277 for a discussion on the method and upcoming PHP support starting in version 8.1 with PHP's array is list function. On that note, I saw Mohammed put in a pull request the other day to support Laravel native casting of enum objects, and essentially just checking does the enum exist function exist in the environment, and if it does, then return true and continue doing the thing. So it's a nice way to sort of start getting ready for PHP 8.1 by using these faux feature flags, checking to see if the function exists and then calling it to determine if the thing is what you think it is. So that's a nice way of kind of getting your code ready for these things coming in an imminent version of PHP.
So question, what's it called if it's not a single, so this is a non-keyed array, right? I mean, it's keyed, it's just integers, so you're not defining the keys, it's just filling them in automatically for you. What's it called, a hash map or something?
Yeah,
or a dictionary? I don't know.
It gets a bit murky for me, and I think hash map and there's a struct and there's a dictionary, there's all of these things. I think some of them are kind of synonymous with each other as well. So, in PHP, everything is an array, but there's flavors of array. So in this instance,
sure, right,
list.
Exactly.
You've got we've got associative arrays, which is where they're keyed by string, which I think is a different, it's a different thing altogether in terms of
it's associated.
actual,
right.
Yeah.
Associative array.
But
yeah.
it's only if they're consecutive keys. So if you've got a list and then you sort it,
Yeah.
for example, so if you've got this list of names and then you sort it by name, and that kind of shuffles the array, but you're preserving the keys so they're out of order. So Matt comes first, or Jeffrey comes first, and then Matt, and then whatever. In that instance, because it's shuffling the keys, that by this definition wouldn't be considered a list because
not a
the
list.
keys are not
Correct.
consecutive, starting with 0. So that's something to be mindful of if you're going to be using that functionality.
Yep, makes sense.
Next up, at Juris contributed a has any method to the assertable JSON, which asserts that at least one of the given properties exists. So this is on your JSON test responses in your application testing. That's it for the 8.66 changes. In version 8.67, Dries Vince contributed more PHP 8.1 fixes in preparation for next month's general availability release of PHP 8.1. So next month being November at the time of this recording. So we've got the ability to remove mimicking now that PHP 8, mimicking PHP 8 now that we're nearing the PHP 8.1 release date. So version 9 of Laravel is going to set PHP 8 as a baseline. So in preparation for that, we're going to start dropping some of the PHP 8 specific mimicking functionality. So pretending.
I think you mean Laravel X.
Laravel X. Are we skipping 9 and going straight to 10?
Tim McDonald.
Controversy.
He's got a juicy post out there on Twitter's, on the tweets.
So I have to check this out. I'm a bit behind on Twitter today.
Yeah. He's your fellow Aussie.
He is my fellow Aussie.
Go ahead.
He's my fellow Aussie. We've also got a new prefer lowest build status. So for testing, we've got separate build steps for minimum versions for Symfony, PHP Unit, and Common Mark, as they cannot be bumped through Composer. They were bumping some libraries for PHP 8.1 compatibility, adding more clearer messages for skip mail test on PHP 8.1, since Swift Mailer won't be patched for it, and we're going to be moving towards the Symfony Mailer component. And some of the PHP 8.1 tests have now been unskipped now that we've got complete support for PHP 8.1 raring and ready to go. So great work to the team at Laravel. We talked about this last week, where they've been going through the wars, essentially trying to get everything ready for PHP 8.1 with all of the miscellaneous breaking changes across the ecosystem. So good work again to them. And lastly, two pull requests we've had here, or two changes that we've had brought in for Laravel 8.68. The first is a database schema restrict on update. So this was added by Melik Rebai. It is a restrict on update migration method, which is just syntactic sugar for on update restrict in your database migrations. And lastly, Nuna Maduro contributed 3 new methods to the test response class, including a DD headers, and DD session methods. So you can dump the response without having to sort of, previously you'd have to like tap the response and then DD response JSON in there. So now you can just response DD and it will give you the JSON payload that was returned. So that is all of the things that we have hit here at a high level. There's a whole bunch, as always, of fixes and changes and additions, which we will link to in the show notes.
I think Tim was trying to make a joke when he said this, because he deleted his original tweet. So I don't know. Tim, what are you doing? What are you doing over here? Stirring the pot, causing controversy.
That is the Australian way.
That is the Australian way. I think maybe I'm just gullible enough to, believe Tim. Hey, FYI, sidebar. There was a dude who was painting some stuff at our offices this Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, hey, good morning. How's it going? And he's like, hey, mate, how's it going? And I'm like, oh, boy, one of these.
We have infiltrated your inner sanctum.
Oh, no, it was hilarious. Like, literally, he was the most Australian-sounding Australian. Way more Australian than you. I don't know if that even makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've been talking to me long enough that you now sound a little bit less Australian, maybe. Or maybe you just talk to, American. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. But he was like, I don't know. I don't know if there's different levels of Australian accents. Like, if I talk to somebody from Texas, they've got they're like a homegrown, like Southern Texan, whatever. They're gonna have they're gonna sound like they've got that Southern drawl, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. you talk to somebody from Georgia, they're going to have a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
There's different sort of
People
dialects,
from
if
the
you will, right?
people from the eastern states of Australia definitely have that more stereotypical Australian accent than us
Yeah, that was him.
than our non-convict settling parts of Australia where I'm from.
Yeah, so he definitely sounded like, Crocodile Dundee, right?
Mm-hmm.
He just was like every catchphrase. It was hilarious. He was a really, really nice guy, right? But I was like, what part of Australia are you from? I can't even remember. Victoria. Is that right?
Yeah.
That sound
So
right?
definitely from the
Yeah.
eastern states.
Yeah. And I was like, my buddy's from Adelaide. He's like, oh, the city of churches or something.
Yep,
That's what he said.
us.
I don't know what that is. He said, ask him about how many churches they have in their city. I didn't know what that was.
We have a lot, like actual churches. You know what a church is?
I do know. I was just like, I have never heard this city of churches thing. What is
so
this?
we have lots of churches in our city.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's gotcha. Okay. Well, if I come, I'll have to, if I come over there sometime, have to go see all the beautiful churches in Adelaide. Although I kind of feel like if I come over to Australia, I'm probably not going to make it all the way to Adelaide.
No, probably not.
Probably not.
Most people don't.
No.
Most people coming to Australia kind of stay on they'll go to Sydney and that's it. That's Australia to most people, especially most Americans. They see Sydney and they're like, this is Australia.
Yeah, I'm gonna spend some time in the bush in the outback. I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna go like central. Dude, it's such a huge like continent, and like only you look at it at nighttime, and like only the southern and eastern portions like along the coast are lit up.
The coast that's right. Yeah, it's only really the coast that's settled. There's like this whole plain between where I am in Adelaide and Perth, where there's just like nothing. There's a dot here and there, but there's just nothing for. I think it's 2,500 kilometers or something, or 3,000 kilometers.
Oh my
from here
gosh!
To Perth. Like there's just
so
nothing.
It's literally all it's just all outback. That's what it is, right? It's just like just nothing.
Yeah,
wow.
all of our population. I think 96% of our population is concentrated along the, those capital cities basically.
Is it like uninhabitable? Is that why there's nothing there, or is it just really harsh land?
There's just no infrastructure. There's nothing out there. Especially through the middle of Australia, it's just too hot. Like it gets 50 degrees in summer and things like that. It's just there's no water. There's just because we're a giant island. Like there's nothing in the middle.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. There's like you don't have any like massive rivers or anything running down from. Yeah. No. Okay. Not like Mississippi or anything. Okay, cool. We can move on, my friend. Hey, we're going to transition to the packages section. You know what we need? We need like a soundboard or something to like cue the packages music. Packages. Packages. All right, here we go. TallToasts is a toast notification library for the Laravel Tall stack. Michael, what does Tall stand for? Tall.
Tall stands for Tailwind, Alpine, Laravel, and Livewire.
So if you happen to be using that stack, Tailwind, Alpine, Laravel, and Livewire, you can use TallToasts. So what makes this package stand out to me is the ability to render customizable toast messages, either from the backend or the front end. Thank you, Entangle. The TallToast package also has a negligible footprint on the published CSS JavaScript. So the front end API for triggering a toast message looks like this. Toast.info, first argument, you pass in the description, and the second argument, you pass in the title. That's it. Or you can say toast success or toast warning or toast danger, and then you actually have a very similar API from the PHP backend, which is toast as a function call, so toast double parens, arrow info, where you pass same signature, description first, title second, and then you just say arrow push. That's it. So you can do the same thing, toast info, toast success, toast warning, toast danger. And then these toast messages, you then show them up on the front end, right? In addition to the API, you have complete control over the look and feel of the messages by overriding the package's default blade views that come styled with Tailwind classes. So if you need toast notifications and you happen to be using the Tall stack, this solves either sending them from the front end or sending them from the back end, sending them from Alpine, or sending them from Livewire, right? Solves both problems for you, so you should definitely check this one out. And since it also allows you to override and customize the toasts completely, you're going to want to check this one out. I am going to send this to my other developer right now. There we go. It is sent. All right, Mr. Dorinda.
Beautiful. Next up, the ability to crawl and index your website with Laravel Site Search, which is a package by our friends at Sparsy. You can think of this as a private Google search for your sites to crawl and index all of your content and provide a highly customizable and indexed search. This one will use Mueller search in the backend to handle all of that indexing and searching for you. Using this package, you can create an index via the provided artisan command, which will prompt you for the name of the index you'd like to make, the URL of the site, and so on and so forth. And once you have your index, you can crawl the site using a queued job with the provided console command and search against the index very easily. You can use the search, so the sparsity site search class, on index, provided the name, and then query, and then fetch the results. And you can limit it to the first 20 results. You can paginate by 20. And as I said, under the hood, it's using Mueller search, which provides exceptionally fast search speeds and various customization options. Mueller search is like, I've not used it myself, but it looks and feels like a much lighter weight, much easier to get up and running version of Elasticsearch, which is always, in my experience, a real pain to get set up and running. So if you're wanting to add site search to your application, to your website, to whatever you're building, and you don't want to deal with the pain and suffering of Elasticsearch, and you don't have the budget for something like Algolia, then definitely check out Mueller search. It's included out of the box with Laravel Sail if you're using that, or even Titan's takeout. You can spin up a Mueller search container to work with. So definitely check that out. We'll have links to all of that in the show notes.
Very nice. Okay. We have another package here from Ryan Chandler, and this is the using PHP package. So what this does is it enforces the disposal of objects in PHP. So this is inspired by Hack and C#, and it's useful when working with file handles. So what it does is the package contains a disposable interface and then a global using function, and what this does is it ensures object disposal. So in this case, in the README, he has an example where you'd say class text file, it implements disposable, and then what it does is it has a file file opener, right? So you're going to be using this file handler, and what you want to do is when this class is done being used, you're going to call this, it will call this dispose method, which you set up inside. That's what the disposable trait when you implement the disposable class, you have to have this dispose function method, and in this case, it's going to close out that file handle. This is really helpful for if you have something like, let's say you're uploading a large number of files or something and an exception gets thrown for a bunch of them and you never close those file handles. You could run out of memory or any sorts of things like that, right? So, and there are other instances where you could use this as well, but this is just a really good example, and in the example that he happens to provide in the README. So then the way that you do this is you say using, and what that does is that will make sure that the dispose method is called even in the event of an exception. So you say function using, and then you pass in that disposable thing that you're going to be calling. In this case, that was that text file. And then you call that, and then in this case, even if it throws an exception or whatever might happen, it's going to go ahead and call that dispose method to go ahead and close out that file handle, which is really helpful. So there you go. Very nice.
Beautiful.
Very nice, very nice, very nice.
Next up, we have the Laravel Soft Deletes Parent package, which is a package by Brian Dillingham that soft deletes child models when a parent model is soft deleted. Automatically soft delete a model's children while maintaining their own soft deleted state when you restore the parent model. After installing the trait, the post model's parent deleted at, so this is using a separate column so you can link the children with their parents. The parent deleted at column will be updated whenever an author model is deleted or restored. This allows you to maintain the original deleted at for the post model after author is restored. The post model will scope queries to exclude any where the parent is deleted. To use this package, you need to add a parent deleted at column to the child field in the database, and the package provides a migration helper to generate the correct column and a trait to the child model and register the parent models. So you would put into an app service or into a service provider somewhere a register in your register method, post soft deletes parent, and then pass it author class. So now you can query with parent trashed and only parent trashed. And so this is a good way if you need to cascade the soft deleting of records, but still maintaining the association, being able to determine when the child records were deleted independently of the parent and vice versa. So definitely check that one out if that is something that you're working with.
I feel like you did this once.
I did
Didn't
it
you do something similar to this?
I did a package called Cascade Soft Deletes, which essentially just whenever you delete a parent, it'll recursively go through and delete all the child records. And if they're using soft deletes, like it'll set the soft deleted at, but there's no way to
Sure.
restore in that scenario because
Gotcha. That makes sense. Yep.
you don't know, like, was a model deleted when the parent was deleted or was it just deleted separately? So by adding another
Yep.
column, you can track, okay, this was deleted at the same time as the
Yeah.
parent, kind of thing.
That makes total sense.
So this
Yep.
allows you to
Good
link
point.
that together. So if you wanted to restore the whole thing, the whole chain, you can do it based on that value.
Yeah, you wouldn't end up restoring all the ones that were actually deleted beforehand, right? So like,
correct.
If you had a draft of something that you deleted, you're like, I don't want to do that, and then you said, well, I deleted that user, but I actually need to restore that user. It's not going to go back and like restore all of their drafts that were deleted as well, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, gotcha. Hey, Michael, I would love to take a second to just tell you about Honey Badger. Should we do it?
Let's do it.
Michael, let's face it. Your code, no matter how good of a developer you say you are, and you say that a lot, your code's going to have errors, even when it's written by amazing developers like you and me. So when errors happen, it's really nice to know that Honey Badger has your back. Honey Badger makes you a DevOps hero by combining error monitoring, uptime monitoring, and check-in monitoring into a single, easy-to-use platform. Honey Badger sends you alerts in real time with all the context needed to see what's causing the error and where it's hiding so you can quickly fix that error and get on with your day. It also includes uptime and cron monitoring and lets you know when all your external services are having issues or your background jobs go missing or silently fail. You can go to honeybadger.io and discover how Star, Josh, and Ben created a 100% bootstrapped monitoring solution. Why is that important, you might ask? Well, self-funding means they only answer to you, the developer, rather than a venture capital overlord like Shark Tank, right? Those people. Kevin O'Leary, they're not talking to Kevin. They're talking to you and me, the developers. So check out honeybadger.io and get started monitoring your errors in your code today. Thanks so much, Honey Badger. We appreciate you. Okay, my friend, on with the show. We are on to Storybook.
Yes.
This is interesting. A storybook is sort of like a thing outside of, this is not a new concept, right? This is not a new concept, but now we have Storybook for Laravel Blade.
Yes, it's called Blast, and it is Storybook UI development for Laravel Blade. So Storybook for Laravel Blade is a package to build component libraries using Laravel. Blast lets you render examples of your app's components using the Blade templating engine and Storybook server within your Laravel application. You can think of Storybook server as a UI development environment for your Blade templates that is rendered by Laravel. The package makes it easy to iterate on components using Storybook, using the @Storybook Blade, what do we call them? Blade directive?
Component? Directive?
Blade
Thank you.
directive.
Yep.
And so you can load something out of Storybook with given arguments, and then you can render a button in isolation. As you make changes to components, Blast will watch changes and automatically regenerate the stories and update Storybook. Once you get Blast installed in a new or existing Laravel application, the package provides various configuration options, including a Storybook server URL, the Storybook theme, the canvas background color, configurable asset autoloading, and more. While Blast will help you get started quickly with Blade and Storybook, it is recommended that you read the Getting Started with Blast Storybook for Laravel Blade, as well as the Storybook official docs. You can learn more about the package, get full installation instructions, and view the source code on GitHub. We'll have links to that in the show notes. But Storybook, you can find at storybook.js.org. It is an open source tool for building UI components and pages in isolation, and it streamlines your UI development, testing, and documentation. So it looks really interesting if you're wanting to build out all of your components and have like a place to sort of
library
reference
where you
everything.
Just kind of go grab and
kind of like Tailwind UI, but tailored to your application, your business, your whatever.
Yeah, so it's like also it provides like a sandbox for you to build these UIs in isolation, so you can like those like edge cases where they're kind of hard to replicate in your interface. You can pass in variables to these user interface elements and kind of generate what it would look like in that case. So you can mock those hard to reach use cases and make sure that they still work in that situation, right? Yeah. So maybe you have a graph or something, and if you have some outlier data, what does it do in that case, right? You can mock that data getting passed in this Storybook, and then you can see what that looks like without having to do a whole bunch of futzing around in your database and all that stuff. I'm actually really interested in this. This is something that we're kind of taking on as a priority as we're moving forward. Is we're wanting to make sure that all of our applications really have a consistent interface across the board, just to make sure that users don't get lost.
Mm-hmm.
And right now it sort of has this disjointed feel. We have like some legacy apps that were designed and they kind of had their own sort of pattern. And then we had this in between sort of, we didn't really have a consistent way of doing it. We were sort of transitioning between Bootstrap and Tailwind, but we weren't fully in the Tailwind camp yet. And then now we're full Tailwind, but we've kind of got, a couple sites that look consistent, but the rest of them don't. So we're getting ready to dive into that, and something like this would actually be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
The only thing is, I suppose, is that we still are using Vue in some spots as well, right? So we started using this before Livewire was around and before we had Laravel Blade components. So this is super helpful, but we'll have to see if it can kind of span, straddle both.
You'll be pleased to know that Storybook works with React, Vue, Angular, Web Components, Ember, plain HTML, Svelte, React. It works with all these different things.
This particular one, Storybook itself does. Maybe this is just sort of I don't know if this is just like integrates with Storybook itself, because Storybook is. Yeah, maybe it does. I'll have to look into it.
It's funny you mentioned that, because even some of the big, like if I don't know how much you use Facebook, but you will always eventually find your way onto a page in Facebook that looks like Facebook from 10 years ago. There's always the page that's got like the old style square buttons and the just the flat blue. But like our biggest telco here in Australia, if you click around far enough, you'll find like an interface. If you want to view your historical usage, it'll take you to like an old interface. You can see like all the redirects that it goes through to find this thing, only to ultimately tell you that like the data's not available there anyway.
Nice.
Happens to the best of them.
Yes, it does. I mean, it's just gonna. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just going to happen kind of regardless of how careful you are. But a tool like this makes it really easy, so that when you have somebody who's new to the team, they can just go to your component library and kind of grab the pieces that they need, right? This is why Tailwind UI is so popular too, right? Because it provides like this template where you can just go in and say, yep, I like how that looks, copy, paste, you're done, right? And so this gives you the ability to even take something like the Tailwind UI components, which typically you're going to take them and customize them a little bit, or even turn them into these Blade components, right? And then you can just have your own library with your own custom brand colors and all that stuff. And then whenever you're trying to build an interface out, you now have essentially a customized Tailwind UI that you can throw in anywhere you want, right? Which is really nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on, creating rich data objects in Laravel. This is a package from guess who? Guess who? I'll give you two guesses, and the first one doesn't count.
I don't know. Who makes packages for Laravel? Must be Spassy.
Our good friends. It's Spassy. You got it. So Laravel Data is a package by Spassy that enables the creation of rich data objects, which can be used for form requests, data transformers, and more. So I feel like Freak has sort of been on the forefront of this push, I suppose. They've got their DTO package, they've got their enums package, right? They've got all these things, but they love to package these things up into objects, right? And so their newest package here basically allows you to use these same objects in all of these different places without having to describe the data structure multiple times. So the API is simple for data objects, but it unlocks really powerful features. And so you just do this by taking your class and extending the data class, which comes obviously with the package. So according to the documentation, extending the package's data class gives you valuable features for working with data across various aspects of Laravel. So buckle up. You're probably going to need to read through this yourself because there's a lot of it, but I'm going to read a couple things here that I think will be helpful. So here are a couple things that extending that data class will do for you. It will automatically transform data objects into resources. Think like the Laravel API resources. So it takes a data object and moves it, creates a resource out of it, like a JSON resource. It can transform only the requested parts of data objects with lazy properties. So when you load it in, it's not, think like attributes off of your model. They only get evaluated when you call for that attribute, right? So transform only the requested parts of data objects with lazy properties. It can automatically create data objects from request data and validate those things as it's creating them. It can automatically resolve validation rules for properties within a data object. It will make it possible to construct a data object from any type you want, think like casts. It adds support for automatically validating data objects when creating them. It generates TypeScript definitions. This is interesting. So like we've talked about some of these things where there was a package recently where they would take an eloquent model and then generate a TypeScript definition from that model, right?
Yeah.
And so Spatie is taking all those things and kind of rolling them into this one package. So now you can generate a TypeScript definition from your data object. You can also save data objects as property of an eloquent model. So think you have this data object and then you serialize it and store it as part of an eloquent model, and a bunch of other things. The other nice thing about this too is you could have multiple data objects that get hydrated from a single eloquent model. So in that case, it's almost like a presenter class, right? So you could use these as presenters as well. They also have an example from the documentation here where you just say, in this case, the class that they're talking about, which is their data object, is song data. So you say song data : from, and then they pass in a song model. But you can also create data objects that could possibly be null. So instead of song data from, you can say song data optional, and then pass in whatever's going to be in there. So if you were going to do a find, and you may get a null back, you could just say song data : optional, and then it won't fail when it tries to create that song data. It will find the required properties from models and then use them to construct the data object. And here's the big benefit. You don't have to write the same properties in multiple places, like a resource or a data transfer object or for request validation. It has eloquent casting, a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to read any more of it. There's a bunch of things here, right? I know that we could definitely benefit from this. Any of us who are using DTOs around your app a lot, this seems like something that could be really helpful for you. And I'm definitely going to have to take a look into this one a little bit deeper. But LevelData is what it's called. Laravel-Data, powerful data objects for Laravel. So that's a good one. That's a really great one. Thanks, Spatie. It looks awesome.
It's definitely a comprehensive package, especially as you say, wrapping up all of those different bits and pieces. If you're exporting your models to TypeScript definitions, if you're passing things between form requests and validation and all of that kind of stuff, it handles it all for you. It's like it requires PHP 8. It's very attribute heavy in terms of some of the definitions, in terms of the automatic validation rules and things like that. So it's just something to be mindful of if you're going to be working with it in that regard. So definitely worth checking out. I think it's a comprehensive package. I know that Frank said that they've been using it in one of their large client applications at the moment. So it's definitely something that is worth looking into. It's certainly being used at scale in their context. I think from the stream that I saw and from the context I got that Frank did the other day, it was just a short one, but I think there's still probably some gaps in terms of feature parity with Laravel. But definitely an interesting idea in terms of something that you can use in your applications moving forward. So check it out.
Yeah, because you can roll your own DTO stuff, or you could use their DTO stuff. But the nice thing about this, and sort of the pattern that we got into and then ping me, is like you want to transform a request as soon as it hits the edge, as soon as you can get to it, you want to create it into an object that you own, right? Something that you know what it is, right? But the nice thing about this is it's not just a DTO, it's not just a class, it's actually transportable between all the different Laravel things that you're going to have to do with it, or that you would do throughout the request lifecycle, right? So it's built obviously by Spatie, since they use Laravel so heavily. It's custom built to give you that ability to make a data object, but then pass it around to all the different places without having to write it again in each spot. So pretty powerful. Really, really cool. I mean, again, the thing is too, which you have to consider on this as well, is if you're going to build your entire application around this, you're going to, just hope to God there's nothing ever that breaks in this package or whatever, right? Because you would have to rewrite everything using these data objects all over the place. So you definitely want to make sure you're bought in all the way if you're going to kind of go all in on it. Yep.
Yes, indeed. All right, on to tutorials. The first one we have here is from Again, Chris Vidal, things I didn't know about SQS. So he goes into detail around some of the intricacies and what's the word? Intricacies and eccentricities, I guess, of using
Mm-hmm.
a simple queue service on Amazon Web Services. So he's talking about visibility, timeouts, long and short polling, guarantees of job order. So by default, SQS is not FIFO. So, you throw 10 jobs on the queue and job number 7 may come out first, then 2, then 3, then 1, then, there's no guarantee that the order that the jobs are pushed onto the queue is the order that they'll come off of the queue, like with Redis, for example, using Laravel Horizon. So something certainly to be mindful of, especially if your jobs do need to happen in a particular order. So definitely check out that if you're using SQS or you're down the path of considering SQS and whether or not you'd use that over Redis or something like that. It is a good overview of some of the things that you need to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you're going to be using SQS, definitely want to know about these things. So Chris is sharing his hard-learned lessons here. And of course, he does the same in his other courses that he's got out there as well. So if you're a fan of Chris's work here, definitely check out his other courses. He does a great job. He's a great teacher. So I also threw in here some community links that I found really interesting. So the first one that I threw in here was validating email addresses. So I was actually not aware of this, but when you use the email validator, there are actually multiple different filters that you can use to pass in after that email validation. So if you say, arrow sign, and then you're passing in the different rules that you're going to use to validate a particular request key, you could say email, but you can also say email : RFC, right? And so these different RFCs, these different things have different abilities for validating emails in different ways. So there's a bunch of them included here. There is RFC, strict, DNS, spoof, and filter. But in Laravel documentation, it doesn't really explain a lot of that. So if you've ever felt like the email validation in Laravel was confusing or lacking, or maybe it was giving you a type of validation that you weren't sure why it was giving that, I know in the default one, I think it supports not having like a .com like domain on the end or something. Like I think you can just pass like Jake at Google or something, and it's like, yep, thumbs up, that looks good. Because according to some RFC, yeah, that's in fact acceptable. Well, you might not want that, right? And so this blog post goes through and basically says, here are the different options you can pass through, and here's what you can expect it to validate, right? Here's a few examples of email addresses that will pass this validation, and then they provide like 10 different email addresses that would pass, right? So contact at minute of Laravel, no .com, no nothing. Yep, that would pass. And that's if you just use RFC, right? But then they also have this strict type, the DNS type, the spoof type, the filter type, all these other ones. And they talk about what each one of those do. So I thought this was a pretty good one, just for reference, if nothing else. So thanks, Ivan. Ivan, what's your last name, Ivan? Or your surname? Ivan doesn't have a last name, doesn't have a surname, just Ivan.
One thing that I would be mindful of if you're using, I think it's the RFC validation, maybe one of the validation rules, it may be the DNS one. If you're using like example.com as in your test, you will actually find that the validation will fail because there are no mail records set up for that. So if if you're doing those kinds of checks
interesting.
and your tests start failing when you start playing around with this stuff, just keep that in mind. That things like that may break unexpectedly, but definitely being able to pass additional validation constraints in there, around whether it's a valid RFC or DNS address is something that you need to be mindful of. But yeah, as you said, if you've got local mail addresses, for RFC compliance purposes, if you've got like a user on a server and you're just sending mail to like Jake at Harmonious Pond or something, that is technically a valid email address in the context of a local mail delivery. So that is obviously valid, as you mentioned. So lots of deep, dark, scary things, considering there's 30 or 40 years worth of RFCs covering emailing.
And this spoof check validation one is pretty cool too. So they have like info@paypal.com and info@paypal.com. They literally look like the exact same thing, but one of the A's is not like a standard Unicode A. It's like a different A. And so it looks like paypal.com, but it's actually not paypal.com. It's something else. So if you use this spoof validation check, it can actually make sure that all the characters of the email are from a single script. So it uses this native PHP spoof checker class to make sure that it's not some garbage email.
Yep.
Really cool stuff. So anyway, like I said, reference, check that out. This shared lock or lock for update one, this is interesting too, Michael. I don't know if you got a chance to look at this one at all.
I haven't read it. I had a quick flick through it in terms of like using the lock for update and shared locks in Laravel and in Eloquent for database performance. And in terms of like, sometimes you can be writing to the database faster than you're reading from it, or there are delays in reading from it. And so you run into these issues where you're getting stale data, or you're getting, you're doing inserts that are then conflicting on unique constraints and things like that. So this post from Alex Renocchi goes into, the needs for using mutexes to lock records in terms of critical use cases there. And one thing that can go wrong is to have database problems and let users, by accident, for example, take off the same item twice. If you've got a shopping cart and you're not locking that data, that you could have, someone buys one item and someone buys two items, you can end up trying to fulfill an order for three items. And I think Adam Weathen might have covered this in his testing course some time ago now, where he went through that kind of stuff and how to handle, that kind of quantity constrained stuff. But this post by Alex goes into looking at pessimistic locking in database transactions and all of that kind of stuff, and the tooling that's available within the context of Laravel and how that works under the hood a little bit as well. So if that's something that you've stumbled upon or you're interested in, then definitely check out this post. We'll have a link to it in the show notes.
Yep, absolutely. Good explanation. Thanks, Michael. All right, the last one I linked up here is called Modern PHP Cheat Sheet. So what this is a listing of different structures that you might find in modern projects. And it's not really intended to help teach you PHP, but to help developers with basic knowledge who might struggle with a more modern code base, right? So if you've never had somebody who has used the null coalesce operator, what is that, right? So they see something like that and they're like, what is that? I don't know what that is. You can kind of point them here and say, here's where it is. And or null safe operator, what is that? What's a spread operator? How do you use named arguments, right? What's type declaration? How do you destructure arrays? These are things that you might see in a modern PHP code base that you've not been familiar with before. And so you need a couple examples or something. And obviously you can go to like php.net or whatever it is and get some of that. But they also have some really good examples here, along with here's some ways that you could maybe use these things, right? They also have in each one of these little examples, they'll have here's the version of PHP this was introduced in. So this is available for anything that's PHP 7.1 or greater, a nullable type, right? You can pass in null as a value or as a default. And then as well as like some gotchas, right, that you might run into in case you're using these things. But a really, really helpful resource, honestly, and also kind of helps you to remember what are some things that are available that you might not be using that could be available in the particular version of PHP that you're using that you could take advantage of, like the spread operator or named arguments. Those are really, really helpful things. And sometimes you just forget. I knew there was something new in PHP 8 that I was wanting to use, but I can't remember what it was. And so this has got some links to some of those things you might be interested in checking out. So we will have a link to that in the show notes as well. It's not really it's like github.com/smknstd/modern-php-cheat sheet. Kind of reminds me of that name, that smknstd reminds me of that Yatsu Muda blah blah blah, whatever your name used to be.
Yeah, not
what was
not
it?
pronounceable. iAtStudi.
iAtStudi, yeah, and so nobody ever remembered that. That was Michael's old handle, iAtStudi, and it stood for something. I don't remember. It was like Elvish tongue for like boots of escaping. I have no idea what it was. What was it?
It was a backronym for I am too stupid to use the internet.
Oh, well, hey, that works too. I didn't know that's what it was. I'm too
Mhm.
stupid to use the internet. Very nice.
Still true to
Hey
this
man,
day.
yeah, I mean, aren't we all? I think we said last show like how amazing it is that we can even talk from this side of the world to that side of the world at all.
Yeah.
Like it was just incredible. I mean, it works. It's hard to believe.
Yeah.
Michael, that's the show, man.
That's
That's
it.
episode 154. Any final parting words before I close this out here?
I have nothing to add other than the detail app that I had thought was going to be a good solution to my camera quality problems is proving in the last little while to be dreadful. I don't know how it's coming through
Oh
for
yeah,
you,
it's
but I'm
freaking out.
watching. Yeah, I'm
Oh yeah.
watching the Ecamm stream and it's just dropping frames and it's miles behind. So I don't know what part of this whole setup is the problem, but I don't know. Maybe a new MacBook will fix it.
There you go. Hey, there you go. Get them on order. Not coming until end of November.
Yeah.
So
Out to December.
I've got my
if I order it now.
yeah,
New
I
Christmas
ordered
present.
the 14-inch because I was like, oh man, the 14-inch would be great. I think I'll really like that form factor. And Adam Wathen got like the 14 and the 16 and ended up being like, oh, definitely the 16. The 14's like a baby computer. I'm like, ah.
Yeah, but
so I'm gonna try the 14.
He uses it right as a secondary screen, whereas like I have the 16-inch because it was like the most powerful computer that Apple had available. So that's why I bought it. But it spends 99% of its time in clamshell on my desk underneath my ultrawide. So I don't really use that 16-inch often. And like you can spec up the 14-inch with the exact same processor
Which
and
is
memory
exactly what I did.
and
I
whatever.
maxed it out.
As you can in the 15-inch and in the 16-inch, and really it's $300 difference just for the extra screen real estate. So if you're not using it, it doesn't really matter too much. And in most scenarios, like because I'll happily use my 13-inch MacBook Air when I'm out and about, and like that's fine. So
that's kind of where I'm at. Is like I feel like most of the time when I'm going to be using it as a primary screen, it's going to be I'm going to be on the go, right? Or even as a secondary screen, I'm going to be like going to a meeting. Like I don't want to lug around a 16-inch. If I can have, the 14-inch is a little bit lighter, a little bit easier for transport, then I'll use the 14.
Yeah, and
so I think I'll be happy with it. We'll see.
All the time, as like the primary computer, as the primary display. So no problems there.
Exactly. Yep. I'm excited. I was showing you a little bit earlier. I got an extra MagSafe cable because I'm gonna need a second one. Always, right? You need one. But I haven't gotten the machine yet. So soon enough. Hey everybody, this was episode 154. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. You can find at podcast.laravel-news.com/154. If you liked the show, we would really appreciate it if you would rate us up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be amazing. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to hit us up at Jacob Bennett, at Michael Dorindo, or at Laravel News. Thanks again, Honey Badger, for sponsoring the show today. And until next time, folks, we'll see ya.
Bye.